Moses, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Matt.
Great to see
be
you.
here.
So I like to start with what I call the state of the state, meaning for those that don't know you, who are you? What do you consider yourself, and where are you talking to us from?
So my name is Moses Schneider, and I work as a sound engineer, and as a record producer. I'm sitting here in a Transporterraum. Transporterraum is not my studio. I call it it's my music room. It's not a real studio. For sure, I have some nice gear before it hits the converter. So all the analog stuff is really cool. And so this place is cool for to finish a production. It's normally I record bands, mostly of them live in a live situation, in a room, in a studio, and then we do all the other things like guitar overdubs, tambourines, hand claps, and singing and all that. That's what we do here in my room, because the costs of the room are quite low. Though we are in the middle of Kreuzberg. Kreuzberg is, let's say, the main area for people who live or prefer a left field community, and so lots of people from all over the world, so that makes Kreuzberg very alive. And I live here for 40 years now, so this is really the best place on earth for doing music, to be honest. Yes.
But are you in the city of Berlin?
Right, in the center.
Okay. And I'm aware of you because I think a lot of people are here in the States who saw an early Sound on Sound video of you talking about working at Hanza, and you discussing various techniques in that video.
Yeah.
That's when I first saw you. That's when you first came on my radar.
Yeah, this is years ago. No, it's more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, it is quite old now, isn't it?
Yeah, I have hair, black hair. The hair is gone, Yeah. Something is wrong. The hair is gone.
You know what? Yeah, all your hair disappeared between that video and now. Well, let's go back a little bit. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
Yeah, I was born in 1966, so I become 60 next year. Another 7 years to go, then I retire. I don't know, I have no idea. But I grew up in Berlin, and I grew up, let's say, when the 80s started. I was 14 years old, so punk rock hit me very hard. The end of the 70s, the beginning of the 80s, punk rock changed my life. My favorite band were the Dead Kennedys, for sure. And for sure in Germany, we had such great punk bands, in Germany. And German language is especially very, very good for punk rock.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the consonants, all that. And so that sounds great, German punk rock. So, and yeah, when I went to school, let's say before punk rock changed my life, I was a big fan of the Beatles, and I listened to the Beatles because both of my parents were musicians, and they listened to Beatles stuff. And so my favorite Beatles record was the Red double album with all the La 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 songs on it. And then when I got older, the Blue album was much better with all the strange stuff on it, like I'm the Walrus, Juk Juk. What's this? And so my favorite Beatle was George Martin, the producer, because he was a guy behind all these string arrangements. So he was a guy who combined all these weirdo ideas from the band with classical music. So they were humming like melodies, and then he was writing it down on a score and something like this. So I was very impressed by George Martin. And for sure, later when I read all the credits like Geoff Emerick or the engineers, they become my heroes. They're still my heroes.
When you're talking about George Martin, was it at an early age you started to become aware of the recording process?
Sure. When I listened to Eleanor Rigby, I was surprised how a rock band can sound like this, and the arrangement itself is unbelievable. It has these power chords. You have these like this. You have the feeling of a downstroke guitar. Dun, 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 da, 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 da. It's all in this, but it's played by a string quartet. It's like the two quartets, I guess. Yeah, or was it 2x8? No, 2x4, right? I have the book.
Yeah.
That's so
Can't remember.
But it's the way it was arranged was really like, I was really, wow, krass. That sounds weird to me. But, in Europe, let's say classical music was always a part of my life because my parents, as I just said, were musicians. And let's say Dmitri Shostakovich is still one of my favorite classical writers. And, this Shostakovich, what is it in English? Le Sacre du Printemps is the original title. Le Sacre du Printemps is the holy persons of the spring. I don't know the correct English translation of.
And neither do I.
Le Sacre du Printemps, that was punk rock when they had the premiere on Claude Debussy's 100th birthday, and that was in Paris in 1913, just short before the First World War started, and Shostakovich played these unbelievable piece of music, and there were riots in the room, So the old Turner against the new Turner, and they against each other. So you can feel the tension in Europe. This time it was everywhere. It was even in the culture we had this tension. And so when you listen to Stravinsky's Le Sacre du Printemps, at the end you have drum and bass influences, or let's say we can say this is like drum and bass, but this is played by timpani, and, and this is really hardcore. And so you see, this is where I'm from, and classical sounds always. I was always interested in classical sounds, but also electronic music. We have a very great history with electronic music in Germany. It doesn't matter where you start. You can take the classical composers, and when they went to Cologne in the 50s after the Second World War, they met in Cologne at the elektronisches oder Studio für elektronisch-akustische Musik. That means a studio for electroacoustic music. And this is where all the old composers met, and they were experimenting with four on the floor, with pulses and all that stuff. So this is you see, so we have classical music. So I'm very interested in electronic music, and in the end of the day, punk rock made my day.
Did you play an instrument?
Oh yes, my main instrument is bass, but I also play saxophone, and I play a little piano, I play a little guitar, and all that. Whatever comes to my hands or between my hands.
When you were growing up, did your parents want you to go down a certain path and study a certain path?
No, they had no really. I don't know if they really took care about me. They always said, "Hey, you can learn an instrument. This is for free. You can." So I said, "Well, if it's for free, yes, let's do it." But my friends are playing football downstairs. I want to play football. I don't want to train the piano.
Yeah. Okay. When did you start to take a real serious look at recording as something you could do?
That is an easy answer for me, because, as I said, the late Beatles stuff really changed my life too, because now I was interested in what is 4-track, what is a zinc head, what is this, all these technical terms, what is Dolby, what is gain reduction, what does it mean, gain reduction? I have no idea. And so how can I say it? It's so when I was young, I was interested in a quarter-inch tape recorder. My father, he had an old Revox A77. Maybe you know this machine. So I saw these VU meters, and I was like, wow, cool. So then I was playing in a punk rock band, and we were recording our first single. and we went to a studio and we booked a studio and we had to play live all at the same time. And then I saw these 8 VU meters on the multi-track recorder. I saw the mixing desk, and for me, and then I was 16. When this happened, I was 16, so I was 82. So when I was 82, I was, for the very first time, I was in a studio, and I really liked what I saw and what I could hear, so it really changed my life. I wanted to become a music producer. So that's what I say. George Martin became my hero.
So initially, when you came to the studio, you were coming as a player. But
first of all, as a player, when I was 16.
Yeah.
Then I made my A level, whatever you want to call it in America. So I finished my school, but I just tried to go to the university. After 3 weeks, I decided, no, that's the wrong way. That takes too long. And these days, something great happened in Germany. Let's say broadcast and television was in official hands. There was no private business with broadcasting and television. So in this year, let's say in '85, it changed dramatically. From now on, it was possible to broadcast your own stuff, your own music. You had to order a license from the state. So they said, okay, it feels like you can have this license and do your music, please, or do your radio stuff, blah, blah, blah. So all these little radio stations, they popped up everywhere in Germany. And they had no technicians. There weren't enough technicians. Engineers, like me. I was interested, but I had I never went to a recording school or something like this. So I learned this just by doing. This is a fader, this is a microphone, this is someone talking, and this is guy, he's responsible for the news, and this guy is responsible for the weather, and I was responsible for this small fader here. You know what I mean? So, and after 6 weeks, the studio owner came down and said, well, Moses, I think you are the wrong person here for this live radio thing. I have a studio just next door, and we need music for trailer. We need music for commercials. So this is our 24-track, multi-track studio, and this is yours. Here are the keys, and learn your stuff. And so I learned then, and I worked on a MCI console with an MCI 2-track machine, and after 2 years working there, I had the possibility, or the offer to work as an assistant engineer at Hanza Studios. And Hanza Studios these days were huge. Big name studio in the world. And for me, it was like, wow, I can do this. I can be assistant engineer at Hanza. Yoo-hoo. So
amazing.
Yeah, I had the chance, so I took the chance.
This proliferation of all these little radio stations.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I had no idea they did that, because in the United States, and in the UK as well, I believe pirate radio was a thing. So to have Germany doing this, that's fascinating.
Yeah, they changed the word pirate from pirate into official.
No doubt.
But for sure, you had to order your license, so they checked you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
If you're a political weirdo, you never get a license. You're too dangerous for a system like this. So it was very commercial thing, very mainstream, blah blah blah. But for sure, we had the so-called offener Kanal, that means open channel for alternatives. Whatever was alternative was on an open channel. So
why did they not think you were good at being in the live environment of the radio station and wanted you to go over to where they were making music?
Yeah, Uli was his name, the boss of the studio, and he said, well, you can play instruments. You don't have to just adjust the fader from the speaker. You know what I mean? It's like, no, this is a waste of talents. That's the reason why he said. I had a friend of mine called Sven. Sven was also, I never did this alone, so we were two young kids who just finished school, and we had the chance to to learn from the main engineer in the big studio, and we learned what is a patch bay. This is it means it shows you the signal flow from there to there. So whenever you understand the patch bay, then everything else is easy. That was cool because when I started at Hanza 2 years later, I worked on an SSL console, and for me as a young boy, SSL was like, what is this? There are so many knobs and poties and all these little things you can press or not or whatever. And the easiest way was, hey, this is the patch bay. Watch the patch bay. Read what's signed. What does it say? Group output. What is the group output? So and then you understand the signal flow of a desk. The moment you understand the signal flow, you can go to everywhere in the world, wherever is a studio. The signal flow of a mixing desk is mostly the same. There's an input and there's an output. Maybe there's an equalization. Maybe there is a possibility to send something to something. Maybe you can insert something. Where is the insert? Is it post fader, pre fader, post EQ, pre EQ? And that makes you thinking like, okay, so there's obviously a difference between heavy compression and the equalization before or after the compression. So that's what I learned. And so Hanza was the best studio to learn this. I was responsible for the big hall at the wall. That was the main recording space. And so I had the greatest time in my life was being an assistant engineer for almost 3 years down at the big hall at the wall. And I was assistant number 3. The other 2 assistant engineers there, for example, Peter Schmidt. Peter Schmidt, he was responsible for the mixing room. He worked with Gareth Jones from Depeche Mode, the Depeche Mode producer. And so they're still very close with each other. And so the other, André Giere, he was responsible for Studio One. That was mixing and recording at the same, it was like 50-50. But me downstairs in the big hall, just recording, nothing else, no mixing.
And I'm trying to understand to make sure I'm clear. So you did this run at the radio station.
Yep.
Then the guy says, okay, come on over to this 24-track studio. But that wasn't Hanza yet, right? We were talking about a different...
this studio belonged to the radio station. It was a smaller studio, like a middle class, very low, with an MCI console and MCI recorder. Hanza was 2 years later.
In my head, I had thought originally that Hanza was a studio in East Germany.
No, but very close to the wall. Very, very close. Because there's this famous song by David Bowie, Heroes. No?
Yeah.
When he sings about the couple walking at the wall, and that was a scene which the name of a producer was Tony Visconti. Tony Visconti. He saw David Bowie with a girl walking there, and that's what he wrote down, I guess, when I got the story right. And he wrote it down and gave it to David. Said, "Hey, well, I saw you walking down the blah blah blah," and so imagine we are heroes for one day and all that.
Do you have a distinct memory of the wall coming down and the effect on, everything?
Yeah, sure. Everyone can remember days like this. I was in Hamburg these days, and I was in a studio, no television on. I had no computer. It was in the late 80s. There was no computer available. Affordable for me. And and after 2 days, I went to the secretary of the studio, said, "Yeah, I want to go back to Berlin. Can you please book me a flight back to Berlin?" And she said, "Oh, you want to smell the gasoline from East German cars called the Trabant, they had this very distinctive smell, I said, no, I don't. I want to just go back to Berlin. She said, "Hey, don't you know?" I said, "What?" "The wall is down." I said, "What?" "Switch on the TV. The TV. Where's the TV?" "Okay." And then I started crying for 2 days. Because I was born there, For me, it was like it changed. For sure, it changed all of our lives. But it was incredible. So I immediately, went back to Berlin. I moved back to Berlin. So I just had almost 1 year in Hamburg. I tried something else. Oops. And then let's say the years right after the wall came down, that was like anarchy in West Germany, in West Berlin. Everything was possible because you never knew who's the owner of this building or who is responsible for that. There was no responsibility. There was no owner because it was owned by the people of the German Democratische Republic. You know what I mean? And because the Republic didn't exist anymore. So we had so many possibilities. In a city like Berlin, imagine you can go in any warehouse starting a party and no one was responsible, you know. So there was party for 4, 5, 6 years. For sure, year after year, or let's say year by year, we found the owner, or someone found the owner, and the owner said, no party anymore. Now we sell this building to a hedge fund.
Wow.
So, yeah, but hey, this is the first years when the wall came down was for everyone in Berlin. Everyone had a great time, and this feeling was like families coming together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's you know, there was no hate. There was, let's say, you can say there was love everywhere. You know, it's like, you are welcome. You know, it's whenever you saw someone with his Trabi, you know, coming to Kreuzberg, everyone was yelling, yeah, cool, you are cool that you are here. It was really great. It was a great time.
I can't even imagine emotionally what that was like for everybody.
It's like birthday and Christmas and all at the same time, you know, for years.
Because, you know, all we could do here is watch it on TV and be like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Yeah. Let's go back to Hanza. You must have learned an immense amount immediately.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I learned how to clean the toilets, the restrooms, because these days, in the late 80s, Berlin was also known for heroin, you know, for drugs, you know, heroin. That's the reason why David Bowie, why Iggy Pop, why they all came to Berlin, because it was affordable. And we had this time when all these bands from Australia, Nick Cave, a birthday party, you know, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds was this original band where was the birthday party. Then we had Crime and the City Solution. We had so many bands from Australia coming to West Berlin, you know, because West Berlin was, as I said, everything felt quite easy, you know, and heroin was obviously it was very affordable. So and all these musicians met at Hansa Studios. Tom Müller, the former studio manager these years, he was very close with Daniel Miller from Mute Records. Mute Records was Erasure, Depeche Mode, all these electronic bands, you know, and they made a deal. Daniel Miller said, "Hey, I book so much time in your studio. Can you make us a special offer?" And Tom Müller said, "Yes, for sure. Come by as often as you want. You get always a special deal." And I was working as an assistant engineer at a big hall. So all the bands met at the big hall, and they were jamming together. And that changed my life again very dramatically, because in the late 80s, let's say throughout the 80s, we had MIDI-controlled music. We had sequencer-based music. You know what I mean? All this became very important. MIDI became very important. Sampling became very important. And click track and all that. And the sound got thinner and thinner because there was this other drug in the 80s. Maybe you remember the disco powder. You know, other people say cocaine, maybe. So, and this is, you know, you had the possibilities to work on an SSL desk with 64 channels. Each one is armed with a noise gate, with a compressor, with you know, all the possibilities. And then you have endless time. And then you had this disco powder. And, you know, I was assistant engineers these days, so I know what happened. So you had all these engineers sniffing the cocaine, and they felt like, great, now we can work for another 12 hours because there are another 1,000 knobs we can turn, and, you know, and all that. And so when you remember the sound of the 80s is very thin, very, very thin. You know, and it changed when Lenny Kravitz came back with his Let Love Rule album. Produced by Henry Hirsch. And Henry Hirsch was the main engineer in this little radio station in West Berlin. You know, you remember the beginning of my career? There was this guy called Henry Hirsch. We were laughing about him because he had this strange haircut from the 70s, these curlies, and he had this jeans, this farmer jeans, you know what I mean? And he made this 60s sounding music, and we were all laughing about him because he said, wow, this guy is from the past. And then he went back. He went back to America, to New Jersey, and then he had the chance to work with Lenny Kravitz, and he produced four albums with him. The very first. The four very yes, you know what I mean. And this is brought back to me the original sound from the 70s, and you. Also brand new for me, not brand new, but that's when I heard it. This sound for a very long time. Again, it was when he is screaming at the very end. You can hear the distortion of the vocal mic. Let me through. It's like, yes, if someone is screaming, then the mic should distort. Yes. So it had a big influence on my work. So what I learned at Hanza, I learned from all these different engineers and producers. I learned really a lot. And in the late 90s, I found my sound, like, okay, now I know what a U67 is doing with drums, what a U47 Fat is cool for bass drum, and so, something like this. That's what I learned. And the engineers I learned from were like Flood. Maybe you know Flood?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know Flood. Yeah, I made 2 productions with him, and Gareth Jones was at Hansa very, very often, and then I had the chance to work with Jill Norton on a Pixies track, because the Pixies were touring in, what was it, 87? I guess in 87.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gil Norton produced a band that I was in.
Okay, yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, so he was great because he said, the band was touring in Europe and they had 3 days off. So they booked the studio, Hansa studio. But because of summertime and vacation, there was no one. I was the only person at Hansa these days. And so the band came by, and I never heard them. Then I never heard the name Pixies, so I just heard, okay, there's a band from America coming, and they want to record for 3 days. I said, yeah, okay, easy for me. And then the band came in and said, yeah, our producer, Jill Norton, he will come tomorrow, but we can start already. And said, okay, so put the drums here, the bass is there, blah, 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 blah. Then Jill Norton came in and said, well, Moses, I don't know the studio. You know the studio better than me. So you are the engineer. I'm the producer, and you are the engineer right now. And then I recorded the song, and this was my first international credit.
Wow.
And this album went also #1. I don't know. I'm not sure, but and someday I got something like an information that, hey, you were nominated, blah blah blah, because of blah blah blah. So I said, oh, cool, my first international credit.
Was that the album Doolittle?
No, Bossa Nova.
Okay.
On the Bossa Nova album.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. If I had known this, that this would change my life again. Because in the late 90s, I was in New York very, very often. And it opened all the doors, for me as a engineer from Berlin, coming to New York. But, it changed everything when I said, yeah, I worked with the Pixies. They said, Pixies? Okay. Here, come in. You learned at Hansa and worked with those Pixies, come in.
Right. So you're German, you worked at Hansa, and right.
And I worked with Pixies. Yeah.
Right. You got that's all we need.
Yeah, that means open door everywhere. And even the studio manager, after years, I quit at Hansa, and I asked the studio manager, hey, can you give me a piece of paper which proves that I was assistant engineer at Hansa studio? And he said, there is no need. Because when you go to a studio, say you are from Hansa, they will know immediately if you know what you're talking about or not. And he was right. I couldn't believe him, but he was right. So whenever I said, yeah, I'm from Hansa and I learned this, blah, 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 for me, I could go in every studio in the world. Everything was easy for me. And Pixies, as I said, was one of the biggest tickets, like, come in.
How long did you work at Hansa?
3 years.
Just 3 years?
Yeah, no holidays, like
It's 3 years straight.
yeah, this is
So, do you still go and work over at Hanza? Do you bring projects there?
yeah.
Yeah.
3 weeks again. A band from Switzerland, and they have a producer, but they want to go for the different sound. And as I said, me and an SSL desk is like, wow, for me this is the best. Can do everything. I love this little thing called channel out. So you can do everything turn to 11, like la, 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 and then you have this channel out, and then it's limited, and so it's I love it. So cool.
You worked there for 3 years, but you were there as an employee. But now you're independent and you just bring projects there.
Right. I never left Hansa really. I learned there. It's still the same desk. It's still the same SSL desk. From it's when I go there in the 3 weeks, I will see my little friend, my blue SSL, and say, hello SSL, it's me again. And the SSL will say, hey.
Can you verbalize what you learned over the years at Hansa? Like the takeaways, what I like to say. If there's 3 takeaways you learned from that studio, what would they be? Whether not necessarily technical, but more like making records.
First of all, respect the musician. Don't feel higher or on a higher level as a producer engineer than the artist. The artist will check it, and you ask yourself, why is this artist not working again with me? You say, yeah, because you feel higher than the artist. And whenever you give the artist a feeling you're on the same level, because these music is no mathematics, this is all about feelings, and it's like, how can I say it? It's there's nothing wrong when someone says I don't like it, or I like it, or I like it this way, I like it this way. Yes, I prefer Wednesday. You like a dark red. You know what I mean? So it's just no measurement possible. You can say, okay, you feel it, and I don't feel it. So how can we change it so everyone can feel it? So this is like an exchange of informations, and it's not like, ha ha ha, I'm the big producer and you are the little artist, and that. That as an assistant engineer, that's what I learned. So
respect.
Yeah, never blame the artist. It's maybe it's you, but not the artist. That's what I learned on a let's say on a psychological thing, Ebene level. The other thing is more technical because, as I said, I started there in the 80s, and MIDI and sequencing and all that stuff really took over control. And then I had this chance to work with a Crime in the City solution band from Australia. And they were jamming in the big hall at the wall. The whole band were jamming, no click track, and they were just doing music. And this big hall at the wall began to sound. They had the power and they had the talent to fill this room, especially this certain room, with a great sound. And from this point on, I said, well, the only production which really counts for me is the live recording. It's not click track, then the drums, then the bass, blah, 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 blah. It's all together, best in a good room. And so when I quit in 89, late 89, I quit because I had issues with the production.
Okay.
Because I realized that the disco powder and me are enemies. Doesn't work at all. And I was in a production with no escape. The only escape was to quit the job. That's what I did.
You fired yourself.
I fired myself, exactly. Yeah. But I'm still there at Hansa because I fired myself because there was no other way to get out of this, especially out of this production. And so I had to make this decision. And but my career, it goes on. It's like from then on, I had to work with bands with no budget, and we had no big studios. We had smaller studios, it's a long story. But what I did, I was the only guy in Germany who said, "Hey, we do it live. We don't do it in a sandwich way, drums first, then bass, blah, blah. This is so boring." And for me, the unique sound of a band starts with its tempo dynamic, the way they get faster, the way they get slower. This is when you listen to the first Police album, So Lonely, and that's there's no click track. There is no click track.
It's funny you say that, because I was just watching Rick Beato's interview with Glenn Johns, and Glenn Johns talking about this very same thing. No click track, everybody live. That's where the spirit is, and
Exactly.
that's the uniqueness.
Exactly. It's so easy. It's so easy. For sure. You think you give up control. You can't control each instrument individually. Who needs control when there is a band playing their shit, playing their music? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
and it's up to you. You go to the rehearsal room. You don't stay in your room, and you don't stay in the studio. You go to the rehearsal room, and you prepare the band as good as possible. You are prepared because you know the arrangement, and because you know the arrangement, maybe you take a different studio, because with a very fast punk rock band, you never would record in a church. Even if a church sounds cool, but maybe for slow and soft music, a church sounds much better than a 70s studio with no reverb at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so sitting in a rehearsal room with a band, then I find the right studio. I can say, wow, this music, I can imagine that this music will sound very good in this studio, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe it's better if we do... for 2 years ago, I had a nice conversation with a band. We were recording some songs, and they said, "It's too fat." I said, how can that be? How can that be too fat? And what they meant was, we used too many tube saturation, tube distortion in the recording way, before it hits the converter. And they were asking for a different kind of distortion, not tube distortion, but a solid state distortion, So, and there's a big difference. And for when they said it was too fat, it was that too much of the low frequencies were distorting already, and they wanted to have this more this transistor distortion. It was like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So that's. This is how you to talk with musicians. How do they feel their sound? And then you can find, when we go to this studio is world famous for all the tube stuff, tube mic, tube equalizer, blah, 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 blah. Even the tape recorder is tube, because it's a 4-track tube from 56. But it works. I wouldn't book this studio with a band, which prefer this, who prefer these transistor distortion. So that's what I mean. First you work with the band in a rehearsal room, and then you decide which studio is the best because of the equipment, because of the acoustic of the main room.
I'm curious about when you left Hanza and you had bands that couldn't afford a bigger room, and you took them to smaller spaces, yet you still had them play live.
Sure. I learned a lot about how do you say leakage or crosstalk.
Yeah.
Bleed. when they bleed exactly. They call it bleed. Okay, that's what I mean. It's it's very important. It's like the salt in the soup. This bleed gives you a depth of a band. Imagine you have the guitar on the left and the guitar on the right, and there's the drums in the middle. And because of the over compression in the drums, you have all the guitars also in the middle. When you work in the sandwich way, like one after another, blah, 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 with no bleed at all, you have to record the left side, the right side, and you have to record the middle as well, because there is nothing in the middle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have 3 guitars for this stereo picture. And with the live recording with bleed, you have this natural, you have left and right close, and then 2 or 3 meters later, they will meet at the Wurst, at the center of the drums,
right.
with the over compression. If the guitar is starts on the left side with its lick or with riff, there's already a depth, There is something behind it, like an aura, and same with the drums. The drums, because we have bleed on the guitar mics, because there are drums on a guitar mic, and when the guitars are left and right, they are panned left and right, extremely left and right. And when the drums, when they make a pause, the guitars pause, and the drums play just by themselves, then you have the picture of the drum kit plus the bleed from the guitars left and right. So it's even a bigger picture of the drums because no one else is playing. And when I come back, the guitars, so everyone goes back to its place, then it's wieder the original stereo and so on. So it's like mixing itself. And when you work with overcompression, like on the Wurst or on room mics, then you have this, okay, the band is mixing itself, the way they play it, Is it cool to play the cymbal this loud, or maybe you should play it a little softer, or maybe a different cymbal, or let's try hi-hat, or let's try right cymbal. This you listen to it and then you say, well, I have a problem in this moment when you play this instrument, or guitar player on the left. This is the wrong pickup for this part of the section. This is what you can judge immediately. You know what I mean? Because the band is playing. And so I became a specialist. I did this for 10 years, and no one else in Germany was working like this. And I can't remember with other people in the world, so like doing all these live recordings. And in the beginning of 2000, I had two wonderful things happened. My very best friend this time is still one of my best friends is Gordon Raphael. Gordon Raphael is a Strokes producer.
Yeah.
And I sold my studio to him for $1 in '98. And we started the Transporter Raum. That's the name of my studio in New York at 2nd Street Avenue A. Avenue A, 2nd Street. Yes.
Okay.
So it's Lower East Side, East Village, Lower East Side. So this area, it was in the late 90s. Sorry, in the late 90s, that was a really cool place, like Berlin now, and so I had a very good time in New York, and no one expected from me that I'd do the American rock sound. What they expected was, there's this guy from Germany, from Berlin, einstürzende Neubauten, and now he's in New York, so let's try something different. So I came up with the Wurst and all that stuff, and so they liked it a lot.
So that's interesting. There's another connection there. So the band that Gil Norton had produced that I was in, the guitar player and Gordon are old friends from long ago. And
see?
Yeah, there's such a funny connection there.
Yes. Yeah, they played also live, no click track. You know what I mean? And so that's changed. For us in Germany, playing live or doing live recordings, the record companies, the major companies said to me, Moses, it's really fun to work with you, and everyone has fun, and the music is great. We never sell a record because it's a live recording, but we love your music. So that was a basic feeling. So they treated me like a kind of hobby, So, there's Moses Schneider. Maybe we can burn some money before we give it to the tax.
Do you get pushback from bands about the live recording?
Yes, when the Strokes became famous, and also with the sound in so much bleed and blah blah blah, everything was impossible, and they get famous. And 1 year later, I worked with a band from Berlin, and that was the beginning. The album we did together was the beginning of their career and my career. Till then, let's say 2002. I was an okay engineer producer with an okay income, really nothing to buy. I could afford a car or something like this. So I always paid my rent, and I have an okay life. And that changed completely in 2002 or 2003 when we did this recording, and we entered the charts. We entered the charts on 11, and from then on, the live recording became became, I don't know the English word, let's say, now it was possible with a live recording to enter the charts. So, and then from then on, I had so much work till now. So I produce 5 to 6 records a year. So you can imagine this is quite a lot. And yeah.
Do you continue to go to New York and work?
No, because New York changed.
Yeah.
It
most certainly did.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the clubs are gone. You know, they are hotels, and all the studios I was working in, they are now shops for vintage clothing. You know, this is, it's okay, but it's very sad. You know, New York was such a great town in the late 90s, and when I talk about the music, the scene, and so and I was very into it, and I was out every night, and every night I saw 5 bands. So I really had great fun in New York.
If we look at New York and how that's changed, and we look at Berlin, how has Berlin done in this time period? Is it still flourishing and lots of art and lots of music?
Yes, sure, but we also, gentrification is everywhere, and Berlin is changing also. You see the word change or changing is very often in this podcast. It's all about change.
Yeah.
It never ends. Yeah, for sure. Berlin is changing, not to the better, to be honest. Not to the better. It's the rent's getting higher, and all the little studios, they have to leave the city, the center of the city. And let's say it's the same story with New York, but just years later,
Yeah, and do you think Hanza will last, will survive?
Oh, good question. Next question. No, it's a serious question, because Hansa Studio, as far as I know, is the only studio in the world which belongs to a private person and not to a company. You know what I mean? So, Familie Meisel. Meisel is the name of the old publisher, and she owns this building. And I know that a few hedge funds were asking her how much is the price for this house, and she never said, "I have enough." She always said, "I have enough money," but I love music. I love this answer. Yeah, I have enough money. Sure.
Well, let me ask you this, since we're talking about money. How have you felt? Do you feel like you've managed to survive, or have you ever got to a point where you thought, this is really getting too hard, I'm going to stop?
No, because I never invested my money for a bigger studio or something like this, because for me it's very important to change studios, because then I change the acoustics and I change the routines. There's nothing more dangerous than stuck in your own studio with your own routines. You know what I mean? You always have the same character, you always have the same perspective, and it doesn't matter which band is playing, you always have the same perspective. And for me, it's very important, even with one band, to change studios, because I want to change the perspective. I want to change the sound. I want to hear the band playing in a different room with different reflections. So how can I reflect the sound with the band, and how does they work together and all that? So that's the reasons why I never had big costs, And as I said before, I used to be a punk, and punks don't have a Rolex, don't have a car,
punks
have a
don't
pool.
Need a Rolex.
Yeah, still no.
Yeah, I got an Apple Watch. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah. My living was always on an okay level, and because I lived since for 35 years, I live in the same flat here in Kreuzberg. So my rent is ridiculous low. You know what I mean? Because I have the old contract. So you know what I mean? It's like I try to minimize my costs anyway, and I try to work in teams, bigger teams. So if I need help, there is help around. And if I have to pay something, if I have to pay an invoice, I do it immediately. So when people work with me, they know they got their money immediately. this is your reputation. And then you can ask, sometimes you're in a position you really need help without any money. And then you have a good network, because they say, hey, we had so much fun with your work, and for sure I will help you. I trust you.
Have you bought a lot of gear over the years?
Yes, 15 years ago, I had 2 #1 albums in a row, and I got a lot of money. And I bought all the gear I wanted to own. So that was like a TG Chandler limiter, so many things, like a Manley E-Lob and a real Pultec equalizer, all these little things. And then I was working here with all this gear, and I decided now once in the box, I stay in the box. I don't go back to analog. I stay in a digital world. So I took all this equipment and gave it to the studios I work in quite often. You know what I mean?
You keep your gear there.
I keep my gear. It's mine, but it's somewhere else. It's in the studio, someone else. And when I go to the studio, I say, hey, this is my E-Lob. I want to have this E-Lob on the kick and this one on the snare. So, yes, but to be honest, it makes more sense to invest your money and that's what I did was a journey. 2 journeys with my family, with my kid and my wife, and we made Australia, New Zealand twice. So it cost a lot of money, and that's where the money landed when I got these 2 #1 albums.
So that you have a family.
Yes, and my kid is he's 16 now, and we released his first single when he was 16. He's more into techno music. He is he's on Ableton software, and he's a very cool tech house producer and DJ with 16. So
is he making records the sandwich way?
There's no other way. There's no life way. Yeah, I mean, come on, son and father. Son always tries to do the complete opposite of.
That's right. That's
but we have a cool talk. Early in the morning. I wake up at 6:30 and I prepare everything, the tea and the breakfast. And then we talk about resonant low cuts, envelope filters. It's so cool to talk with your 15, 16 years old boy about dramatical things like the phase, out of phase. What does it mean? Phase cancellation. What is a linear equalizer? What is a linear phase equalizer? What is zero latency? What is this?
Proud dad.
Oh, yes, I am.
Yeah.
And he's quite good in school as well. So normally you think, yeah, okay, maybe he's doing the rock musician blah, blah, blah way now. But no, he's just a young boy and he enjoys life as long as it's possible.
One of the things that here in the U.S. we are plagued with is the costs of healthcare.
Sure.
In Germany, is it nationalized healthcare?
Sure, but you have to. It's not. You have to be in a health insurance. You have to be. So
Okay.
we call it Pflichtversicherung. That means insurance you have to have. There are 2 others, and this is a cool idea. And sure, the best. This is something what I call luxury, and we live in a first world, and one kind of luxury is having a health insurance. This because the older you get, the more problems you will have.
Oh yeah. So your healthcare is taken care of, but you pay into a system?
Sure.
Okay.
I stopped smoking. That's also an investment.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because I think in the Sound on Sound video, you were smoking, were you not?
Oh, yes. I smoked a lot. But 1.5 years ago, I realized, wow, I live in a 4th floor and I don't have a lift. I don't have an elevator. Elevator, meine ich.
Yeah.
So, and then you feel every cigarette you smoked in your life.
Every step, you're like, ugh.
Exactly. So it's very easy to stop smoking when you live in the 4th floor without an elevator.
So if the gentrification continues in Berlin and the expense of the city center continues to grow, where do you see things moving for the recording scene in Berlin?
Yeah.
Will the studios just get further and further out?
Yes, but maybe there's no need for studios anymore because the culture is changing because the technique is changing, and now we have the AI. I don't call it a problem. It's just another step of evolution. Talking about music and recording and producing stuff, So for me, in my world, AI is not really a big help. Recording 5 people in the room, there is no need for an AI. I don't know where the AI could help.
Right.
But it can help when you say, "Well, I have this wonderful version here. Maybe I made an edit, out of 3 versions, and it's perfect." And then I could say to the AI, "Oh, please make sure that the bass and the kick drum are always at the same place." You know what I mean? So if I can talk to an AI and say, "Hey, now you can help me."
Yeah. Now you can be my assistant.
Exactly.
Do you mix most of the stuff you record?
I never mix the stuff I record. Sometimes I have to. Sometimes I have to because there's no money. And then I have to do it because I love the music. And I love it when someone else takes my recordings and adding his fingerprint, his way, his perspective, his ears, his taste, blah, blah, blah. And for me, very important is, as I mentioned before, when I do this live recording, I determine, let's say, for me, left and right is fixed. I open the stereo overheads, and then I can hear one guitar is on the left and one is on the right. So that's what I mean. So all the panoramas and all that stuff is fixed. Mm-hmm. And anything else is up to the mixing engineer. And but this is basically it. Because I'm really into this phase issue and all that stuff, phase cancellation issue, and so I'm really thinking about where do I place the instrument, and is this double check the phase? Do we have any problems? Or I never call it problems. For me, the phase switch is like a possibility to paint something, So it's a longer story that takes another hour to talk about this issue.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: when it comes to who mixes the stuff you do you have an influence in that?
Yes, it depends. When I work with Logic is my DAW, my digital audio workstation, exactly, DAW. And when I record with Logic and I use Logic stock preamps, or and then it's or let's say the recording is equal mix, then I don't ask someone else, because then we are so close, and I don't want to have someone just take down all the faders and starting again, especially with a live recording. With a live recording, it's very important that you don't touch the faders, because with the faders like this, you made a decision. You said, "Wow, this was a great take." And imagine the faders are in a different position. Maybe the kick drum is very soft and the bass is very low, and maybe then you go for another take. So you make a different decision. You know what I mean? So make sure that when you have the feeling after the sound check with a band, wow, with these faders, I feel the band the most, so I never touch the faders anymore. And every decision I make, like that was a good take or that was a better take, is because also of the fader positions. It's not sometimes especially when you have let's say a punk band, let's say, and they play their instrument for a year. So they are not really like the best players in the world. They just learned their instruments, but they have this rage. That's the reason why they do punk rock music. So when I do a recording with this, I'm not interested in the kick drum sound, because when I'm interested in a kick drum sound, I will realize, wow, the drummer is not so good. You know what I mean? When I have an ultra modern, very punchy kick drum, the best kick drum sound in the world, if I have this sound, then it's very easy to see, wow, the drummer is not good. But the moment I have a distorted, low frequency, whatever you call it, and some people call it kick drum, then you say, wow, cool kick drum sound, never heard before, cool drummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you don't have the best drummer, don't take the best drum kit you have. Take the worst.
Right. And then, try to obscure the detail.
Exactly. And put some distortion on it, for example. Overtones and, something out of control,
I had an incident like that many, many years ago. I was doing a recording and somebody brought in a trumpet player to do some trumpet lines, and he left, and it didn't really occur to us at the moment, but later on we realized, wow, that trumpet really is out of tune from everything else. So we distorted the hell out of it. Completely changed everything. Changed the song, just made it amazing.
Yeah.
So I love this idea of obscuring like this so we don't define and draw attention to the weakness.
Exactly. To finish your question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
For example, when I work with Pro Tools, because I am not a Pro Tools engineer, so I go to a studio, like Hanza Studios. They record on Pro Tools. And because I don't have a Pro Tools, I have to make sure that my rough mixes are good enough to continue, like doing overdubs, singing, blah, 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 blah. And the positive side effect is when it comes to mixing, because I am not a Pro Tools guy, so I can't mix it myself. So at the end of the day, a mixing engineer who works on Pro Tools open my session, with the original fader positions, in the original Pro Tools session. And when I do my overdubs, as I just said, I'd only take the rough mixes. You know what I mean? And then we take the overdubs from my session, from the Logic session, and then we take it over to the Pro Tools session. But the faders, it's exactly the same. So when someone says, "Wow, I got used to the rough mixes. Can we have this rough mix sound?" It's so easy. Then the mixing engineer just have to open the session, because this is a rough mix. You know what I mean?
I do.
So,
yeah.
And the moment we did the main recordings, and this is what I really do love when I work with Pro Tools, because I don't work with Pro Tools, and it saves a lot of time, because when I have the possibility to open a song, which each track, then maybe I use this chance, but then I got lost. You know what I mean? It's sometimes it's cool. I work with a rough mixes. It's so cool with instrumental rough mixes.
Do you have favorite mixers that have mixed your stuff?
Sure. And all these years, for sure, I have Peter Schmidt, the first engineer from Hanza, first assistant engineer from Hanza in my days. I worked with him on more than 30 albums. And so there are a lot of people I work a lot with. And let's say last 4 or 5 years, I prefer to work with women, because we don't have so many women, so many women in this audio business. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why I said, well, I'm bored of these boys club. And let's say it's 4 or 5 years now, I work with Nanny Johansson as a main engineer at Hanza, with Janne Grum, the main engineer in Studio Nordbremen. And we have so many talented female producer engineers, and it's a different talk in a studio when you have one woman, one girl in a room, and everyone behaves. And this is this makes such a big difference. And I got many, questions like, can I do an assistant job, blah blah blah, all that, or can I be blah blah blah? And I always said no. Only girls. So to be, there's no other way for girls. So there's this university here in Berlin. It's called the British Institute for Modern Music. It's BIM. And I give courses there, master classes, and there are some girls and young women, and it's like, wow, this is the future, to be honest. And even in punk rock, they changed the sound because we got used to this male, what is the right English word? This
Male dominated.
Male dominated, and every snare drum has to, like a real hit, all this, and with these the last punk rock bands I worked on were only with female engineers, mixing engineers, mastering engineers, and so on. And they made this testosterone-free sound, which is so cool. And the snare drum is groovy now and not like punishing. It's like, hey, it's groovy and it's punk rock. You know what I mean? That's a big difference. And so this is what I do more often and often. And now I share the studio with an engineer from Argentina. Her name is Karen Dios, and we made a great album this year. And hopefully, hopefully this is the beginning of the career.
Do you maintain a website or any kind of social media presence?
I hate social media. I hate all that. But I have no chance. So to say no, it doesn't make sense at all. So let's say 1 year ago, I started with Instagram.
Okay.
So the people know what I'm doing. So I don't load pictures from cats, or I don't take pictures from my food. I just talk about music. And so when someone is following me, then this person is only interested in music I do. And it doesn't matter. It's hip hop, it's punk rock, and everything is possible as long as the main idea is music that is a music that wants to change something. There's again the word change. Sorry for that. But
no, that's okay.
Music which it's not only music, but music which would change something. Then I'm really open for it. Say, yes, come to me. I want to help you with changing it.
Well, I'll in the show notes, I'll include a link to your Instagram account so people can follow you.
Yeah,
know what you're up to. Moses, thank you so much for making time for me. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time, so I'm glad.
Okay.
Our mutual friend Addie introduced us, and I'm so appreciative of that.
He's such a great guy too. He's so limited in his what is he what he wants to do so many things, but everything is so limited around him, and he makes the best out of it, and that's the reason why I got so much respect from me.
Oh, I know. He
goes the heavy way.
He's very enthusiastic, he's full of light. We'll say that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you again, and you take care.
You too.
Thank you.